And it reduces the flood risk, which is a safety factor on a lot of our roadways as well. So it cuts down on your baseline flooding, it improves your road safety, it makes it more accessible for pedestrians, kids on bicycles, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of other things that go along with community aesthetics and reducing flooding risk that we don't really even think about. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so Edith touched on the goal of this project is to identify specific sites for green infrastructure and prioritize those using existing data that we have available as well as technology. So we are using what is referred to as a GIS system, which stands for Geographic Information Systems. It's a way to represent, it's a computer program that helps you represent data spatially. So if you think of one layer of maps on top of another, so we might have a map, which I'll show some maps with one specific thing in it. And when we start to stack those layers of data, we can figure out, how close are certain data points to other data points. What does that mean? We can start to evaluate that spatial relationship and figure out where would be some of these best sites to look at. So we started out with these many different layers, put them into the GIS system, and are looking at priority subbasins. So what we did is we took the City of Toledo and broke it down into small watersheds, which a watershed is anytime a droplet of water hits the ground where it runs to. So it's very small drainage areas is what we're looking at. About 187, I think, subbasins across the city. And then from looking at those priority subbasins, looking within those, once we figure out kind of what subbasins would be best to focus on, looking at specific sites within those areas. So one of the initial pieces of information that we looked at were where do we currently see a lot of flooding complaints throughout the city. And so if you've heard of Engage Toledo, every time somebody calls, they are very diligent and very good at recording that. They get locations, and so all of this kind of sits and resides in a spreadsheet. So we took that spreadsheet and we plotted it on a map. We did filter through some of the flooding complaints just in terms of if the issue was identified, and it was identified to be maybe like it wasn't something that the city would take care of, it was a private land, as a result of something on private landowner land. We filtered some of those out because it's the city who would be putting the green infrastructure in, so we're trying to look at where the city would have jurisdiction and what they would do. So we filtered out all of those flooding complaints, and I can't tell you the time period, but this is just kind of a snapshot, right?
I want to say it's 4 years.
Is it 4 years?
It's not long at all, no.
Okay, and we know that this shifts and changes, but this is kind of the data as it stands right now. The colored areas that you see underneath those dots, those flooding complaints, those are bigger watersheds called HUC 12s. That's just like a zip code. So each of those bigger watersheds has a name, and those are tied to the watershed plans that we're talking about. So we can start to look at where do we see more flooding complaints in the Hillman Ditch, HUC 12, versus the 10 Mile Creek, HUC 12. So we can start to look at some of this data spatially. We also are looking at where are there catch basins throughout the city. So a catch basin is, Edith, do you want to explain the catch basin?
It's all those lovely grates you see in the road, right? Where all the water runs to, either in the parking lot or in the gutter itself. So that is the actual physical connection from the water on the surface to the storm sewer. And for obvious reasons, we've got a grate there because we don't want all the trash and everything getting into the storm sewer, because then that will plug everything further down the line. But we also know that that's a big issue in residential neighborhoods in the fall, if we're not getting all of our leaves off, or in the winter, if the leaves then make this frozen ice pack on top, then the snow melt can't get out through the catch basin to the storm.
So in this map, you'll see those smaller subbasins, those 187 small water watersheds that I was referring to. And for this analysis, we looked at how many catch basins there are per the area that each of those subbasins covers. And so we did this because if you've got a catch basin that has maybe 2 acres draining to it versus a catch basin that has 20 acres draining to it, that gives us some information as to, can that catch basin handle what's coming to it, or do we need something else in there that will help kind of slow the amount of water coming to it, or hold that water back. We are also looking at things like, what is the grate infrastructure that's in place? What do the sewer lines look like in these subbasins as well? And we're looking at the sizing of those subbasins, the sizing of those sewer lines. And so everything that you see in the green here, those are sewer lines that have a diameter of 12 inches or less. And so if they're smaller sewer lines, they're going to have a smaller capacity for stormwater to pass through versus ones that are bigger. So we're trying to tease out some of this information as well. We're taking a look at where is there currently underground detention. So you don't necessarily know what's underneath your feet. But it's kind of cool that there are a lot of underground detention facilities throughout the city. Some of them maintained by the city and other ones that are private, which is what this shows here. The dots in red are actually private underground facilities. So these are facilities that store water underground under parking lots and other areas like that. And then the yellow dots are the ones that are city owned and maintained. So we may be prioritizing an area that doesn't have this because it would need something on the surface to help manage that water. We're taking a look at where is there existing green infrastructure in place. So rain gardens bioswales, retention cells that have already been installed by the city or by other initiatives and other project partners like the Rain Garden Initiative or Team Cog throughout the city. Where are those located, and are there opportunities in subbasins that don't currently exist? Or are there ways to expand upon what is currently there? We are still in the preliminary stages of the output and really looking at where we want to focus on. So this is just one example of an output that we are looking at. This is not the final. I don't want anybody to walk away from here and say, oh, that subbasin is it. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. Because what we're doing is we're starting to take all of those different factors that we're looking at separately and looking at them one on top of the other, looking for statistical significance between those, and really trying to parcel down to, is this a big factor we should be looking at? Should we be looking at really considering areas that already have flooding complaints, or should we be looking at maybe more where there's smaller sewer lines in relation to the area that needs draining? So we're looking at all of those relationships right now. But this is just one example of one of the analyses where we looked at how much impervious surface is within that subbasin and what is referred to as a curve number, which I'm probably gonna botch because I'm not an engineer, but basically how fast does that water run off the surface from that impervious surface. If you have a lot of impervious surface, typically you'll get runoff pretty quickly because there's no way for it to slow down and percolate into the soil. If you've got an area that's got a lot of open green space, typically your curve number is less. Did I say that right, Andrew? Yes. Am I backwards?
Yeah, sort of. No, you're right. Yeah,
Okay.
Lower curve number is lower runoff, but it's typically about like the amount of runoff generated rather than the speed.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean the concept. Yeah.
Thank you. See,
Yeah.
not an engineer. I'm partially right. So the next steps of where we're at, is still looking at those rankings, still looking at those relationships between one factor and another, and trying to figure out, what's the best way to approach this. And a lot of this comes with city input as well. We're not doing this in a bubble. We're doing people who have intimate knowledge about all of these different factors across the city through their various day-to-day, observances. That's part of why we've asked you to be here today, because we're asking for your input, what you see, opportunities that you may be aware of, or where there might be problem areas that we would really want to take a look at. So we'll work on finalizing those rankings, and then once we've finalized where the priority subbasins are, we'll start looking at specific areas within those subbasins, and opportunities for green infrastructure there. So this is just an example picture of what those look like, what a green infrastructure concept would look like. So once we have the rankings, we have the sites that we are looking at to put green infrastructure in, we'll go and put together a concept plan. And this concept plan is really what's going to help us get the funding to actually implement the project. So we'll put a preliminary design together, we'll figure out kind of roughly what the cost on it is going to be, insert those into the watershed plans, which the City of Toledo is pretty lucky in that its entirety is covered by various watersheds by those plans. So those are something that consistently get updated. And so once the project is in the plan, then it's eligible to go after that Section 319 funding. What's really nice about where we're at today with funding in the Western Lake Erie Basin is sometimes there's more money than there are projects. And so I have seen where certain projects have been funded just non-competitively. It's, you know, somebody in an agency has additional money that they need to spend in good ways. And so the projects, once they've been vetted and get into these plans, they know, the agencies know that they're good projects to spend their money on. And so oftentimes those projects get funded without even asking. They get the call, the magic phone call is what they call it. So yeah, that was it. We're once they're in the plans, then you pursue the grant funding, or maybe even get the call to implement. So the timeline, we are looking at refining the tool and really setting that priority list through early summer this year. And then we'll be working through the summer to put those project concepts together to get the information gathered that we need in order to put the projects in the watershed plans this fall. And then we'll be primed to go after funding in early 2026.
So we have a map of the city over here on the easel. We are asking you, that we have push pins somewhere. They're up there. To please put pins into the board where you know flooding happens regularly. Because we don't necessarily know how the streets drain per se. And that 6-inch pipe just sometimes cannot handle the water. But residents know that happens a lot, so they don't call it in as a flooding complaint necessarily. But it can take 72 hours for that water to get off the street. So that's where we need your help to do that. And then we have a public survey online that we're hoping you will take that back to all your neighbors and friends and community members and say, hey, please fill out this survey. It can be done anonymously, but this is to get us more flooding data. Where are areas where potentially we could put in some green infrastructure? Where's flooding happening on a regular basis where the infrastructure is simply just overwhelmed? Okay, we're not necessarily specifically looking for a based on flooding complaint, but you're welcome to report that as well. So you guys have some homework to do as well.
And that QR code is also on the back of this fact sheet. So if it's hard to get it off the screen, grab one of these on your way out.
Thank you, Beth.
You're welcome.
And I want to add, this project doesn't just end after the 5 concepts are put together. This tool is meant to be something that the city can go back to time and time again. Like, we've implemented 5 projects, we're ready for the next 5. So this is meant to be a living process to continuously happen.
And then the Rain Garden Initiative, we have multiple people in our office that are part of that team, and then we work with other partners in the area through Rain Garden Initiative. So we're finding more and more citizens as well as organizations that are helping by putting in smaller cells on private property, which always supports the neighborhood. Anything to get the volume off the street, and so it doesn't go into the storm sewer in the first place, is a really big step. So that also helps us if you're part of the Rain Garden Initiative, or if you know of rain gardens that have been installed in the past that maybe aren't being kept up to to snuff, haven't been maintained, then that's something we need to know about as well.
So then all of any of the strategies that are identified are gonna be on public property? Like, is that what the intent of the grant program is?
Generally,
to do?
generally when the city tries to get
do it,
grant
you're gonna wanna
funding,
do it on
we do it on public property because it just makes it so much easier. But if it's a larger parcel and there is a private entity that is willing to handle that contractual obligation long-term, we're not gonna walk away from it, especially if it's a high-impact site or area, yeah.
And projects that are on private lands are eligible for this type of funding, they just need, the project itself needs to be done by an eligible organization, like a city or a nonprofit.
But like a property owner, if you identified an area that's a really high, target area that's actually owned by somebody, to really do what you need to do is on private property, they could potentially deed it to you if you have a great person who's willing to give you whatever you need to do but they could do it on private property, but it'd probably be best to have it on public.
Yeah, there are conservation easements that would go into place if it's done on private property, but just because it's private doesn't exclude it specifically from this funding.
Yeah,
You can't pick where the problem is, right?
I mean, I can't speak for the city, but, private property, it's mostly private property, right? And
Right.
so the more you can get private property landowners to do these types of things, or even things, maybe not necessarily as big as something like this, but to do rain barrels and, you get a neighborhood together and you have many houses doing that, I mean, it makes an impact.
And we currently have one project where our project area drainage-wise cut over private property.
That's what I would.
Because it's in their backyard and it's a very steep part that they never use, they were willing to sell that little tip, it's a weird triangular tip at the, so they sold that to the city for minimal cost. And we were able to pay for that out of our grant funding. So we always are willing to have the conversation to work it out and see where we can go from there.
You need a pin, you said to put that location on the map.
Andrew?
I probably can ask a lot of questions.
You're fine.
I should limit up a little bit. So, let's see. The first question I have is, so I know with the complaints, right? That's like a little bit of a snapshot in time. But one question I have is, I guess, I know it seems like funding for these 5 projects is not necessarily a major concern, like getting that. But obviously, like funding things is an issue at times. And I'm wondering, is the tool at all like looking into the roads construction like outlook in the future? Because there's so much cost savings to be had if you're able to pair it up.
So we were actually on a call with engineering today, talking about roadway and water main projects that will be coming in the next couple of years. Safe School Pass is something else. So yeah, it is a combined effort across multiple divisions to say, where do we have future projects going in where we could add this to your project for minimal cost?
Yeah.
Where maybe the city engineer wasn't thinking necessarily stormwater runoff.
Right.
But the other engineer that we're working with is gonna come knocking and say, hey, by the way, is there any way we can add this in?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I think my street is on the docket for being repaved. I don't think it's a full reconstruction this year. We're like, come put a bump out in front of my house, take away my street parking. I don't care. Let's do it. That's what I want. But anyway, that's insane. Okay. Another question. Oh gosh. So one question I have is the sub-basins that are delineated, were those taken from like a DEM? Like, okay. This is an aside from this, but I'm always very interested in so the hucks I think are very not helpful for communicating to residents, especially like the Lake Erie frontal and like how it's like broken up. I'm like, that doesn't do anything. I would love for Toledo to have a good watershed map that people can say like, not like, does my water go to the Maumee, but like, does it go to Hill Ditch? And then, anyway, I'd just be curious if like after this project or something, like that data output could be, the city could, at least make it like, if there's some public availability of it and it could be eventually turned into a nice watershed map. There's really, because I really think it'd be great for people to know like, my water goes here. And including, I also think a very important thing, and I know I'm just spewing a lot of thoughts, but it's also, making sure that people who are in the combined sewer service area understand that. And I always think from the Rain Garden initiative, just being able to tell people like, your water goes to this ditch, your water goes to a combined sewer system. You should still put in a rain garden either way, but like it helps them understand and have a better relationship with it. And anyway, I was just like, this is great because I've done some work cleaning up some of the boundaries on my own, but like something automated is a lot nicer and quicker. So anyway.
And that is one of the decisions that has to come out of this project. How many years will this stay internal versus what do we want to make public? So you have now given us feedback on you would like to see the sub-basins as a watershed, watershed map for the city versus the large hub watersheds. Yeah. Okay, no, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the other thing is, I guess I just noticed on the one infrastructure map, I think I saw that there weren't any rain gardens on there. And anyway, I know the Rain Garden Initiative is talking about their mapping and tracking and stuff. And so I told Marilyn I would report back to her following this meeting. Yeah. And so anyway, I'm gonna follow
Now
up.
careful, that's green infrastructure. That may not, that doesn't have private rain gardens.
Okay, so there might be another layer that has it. Well, anyway, I know the Rain Garden Initiative needs to, the inventory is not.
Actually, like
I
I
know they're
said,
trying to work on it.
we've got a couple people in our office that are part of that,
Yeah.
that team.
Right.
And Sarah updated that inventory for us.
Okay, so it hasn't updated. Okay, cool. Because I know I just keep hearing them
Pretty
mention it.
pretty much
Cool.
for Toledo.
Oh, maybe that's what
I
it is.
don't know how well developed it is for Lucas
Maybe
County.
that's the, yeah, okay.
So that's part of doing the public
Mhm.
survey is to get that rain garden information for older ones that we don't know about.
Right, okay, cool. And I guess the last, like, thought, I guess, I could talk about it, but, don't want to. Is just, I guess, just a thought about how I think green infrastructure is awesome and it's really great, but maintenance obviously a big concern and, you know, making sure that, and I'm not the plant expert, but I'm always thinking now, like, what are the simplest planting plants that are pretty, but like low maintenance? But then aside from that, so we tell people that green infrastructure can solve flooding problems, but it can't solve insane flooding problems. You know, usually green infrastructure can help, and I don't want, like, I'm always, my feedback is just, I don't know, like, always gotta be careful about where we choose it, and so that way we don't tell people it's gonna solve a problem, and then it can't solve the problem, because it's just like, you know, so much bigger, watershed is huge, and so I always like think about, like, what is the best way that we can make sure that people can understand it's gonna help us, but it's not going to solve everything day one, and there might be places where it can, but, yeah.
And so that is one of the things where we have that flexibility in the concepts that we're going to do. We are not restricted by code, like a city engineer doing a roadway project has to follow design and engineering code because that's the PE stamp that's on those plans. And if something goes wrong and they deviated from code, that can be their license. So we don't want to do that. But we can come and look at these maps and say, this biocell that we are currently designing is designed to handle a 250-year flood or storm, okay? But you know, there's plenty of stuff just up the street, a couple of blocks, where that could easily turn into a 500. So why don't we build just a little bigger and get a little bit more capacity, and it's not gonna put a lot more dollars in, and we have the space for it. We'll have that flexibility, at least to have the conversation to really look at it and say, is this doable, is this feasible, should we do it? So we're not hardcore held to the codes like the engineers are on roadway projects. So it's a good point, you're right. We're not gonna solve everything. If we get a massive downpour for 4 days straight, everything's gonna flood.
Right,
Unless
yeah.
you're up on a hill.
Yeah, and I'm always thinking, like, just making sure people understand that, you know, given our watershed context. Now, we get rain gardens and rain barrels everywhere, you know, okay, like, we'll be better on our way to that, but, yeah.
It's one tool.
Yeah,
One
right,
tool,
exactly,
one
yeah,
money.
yeah.
Well, Archie?
I'm just excited that there's some real thought behind what's going to be moving forward. Our Junction neighborhood, believe it or not, I believe is one of the greener neighborhoods in the city. We have rain gardens and biospheres all through, just because of, you know, unfortunately, there's a lot of vacant space that hasn't been utilized for the housing stock as of yet. So taking advantage of those spaces is going to help us, because we have our own river, there's Swan Creek in the back of our neighborhood, that part of our neighborhood, the Sterling and Landers Park area is in the floodplain, and we wanna make sure and protect those neighbors because the storm events are so much stronger now. If people are gonna be able to stay in that area and redevelop and revitalize that area, we have to have that kind of forethought. So I was just thinking of Landers and Sterling Park area and how those areas could be utilized to help stabilize and make sure that that neighborhood, that part of our neighborhood can stay in roads.
Right. And you have Belmont Forest
Yes, we do.
with the 2 biocells. I don't wanna call them model projects or guinea pig projects, but they've been a really great example of community involvement between the Junction neighborhood, Timacog, and the city, that are now on our regular annual maintenance plan and are hopefully starting to come along nicer. Every time, it seems like every time we put in new plants, we get drought for 8 weeks. So it's, and we're trying to plant, I don't wanna say exclusively natives, okay? We do throw some daylilies and stuff in there just because they're more drought tolerant. But we're very much trying to stay ahead of the invasives. But it's also an example to show how if you don't maintain the inlets and the outlets, how you can't get the water off the street into the biocell. And no shade, it would be nice to have a little bit more community involvement there, so that's showing, and that's why I say it's a really good example of we have to do more with the community education-wise so that they understand why they need to be involved more on a day-to-day, weekly basis. The city doesn't have the money to come through weekly and do that work. We're doing the heavy lift, but we can't do the day-to-day or the weekly stuff. So that's one of our prime examples of community involvement. Okay. So hopefully they're looking better than they have in the past 5 years. Okay. Ms. Ladon?
I wanted to, so what do you mean by the community being more a part of it, like doing their part, like trash wise? As you said, like if they're not really cleaning it up, it gets filled up.
Yeah, so noticing that you've got a pop cup and a plastic bag and some other stuff that's blocking the outlet so the water can't drain out. A resident on a dog walk or just out for a walk happens to pick it up and gets it into a trash can. Yeah, or just being more aware in general, please, that the trash needs to either go in a trash can with a lid on it or go back home with you, that it's not out.
Have any plans on how you plan to try to educate the community?
It's an ongoing effort. Unfortunately, we have a small staff and most of that staff time is inspections, not necessarily as much as community education as we would like. So we do tackle it through different events throughout the year. And then we're always on the hunt for grants where we can then snag a consultant to will do the public engagement with us. They will do most of it, but we work together on it so that we really can get out into the community and be at your community fair, or be at a community center, or be at a workshop. Something you already have planned, but we bring a table along and we can talk to you all. Or we do a 15-minute presentation and explain to people why this is important.
That's what I was gonna suggest. Junction, we meet here at Mott every 3rd Monday of the month. I was gonna make sure to get your information that maybe yourself or someone from your office can come out and join us for our community meeting. Just people are used to seeing them. They really aren't necessarily the most understanding of what it is and how it's truly helping their home and the value of the home. So I would definitely love to invite you to
We'd be happy to come.
probably be in this room right here. So
And Way is on our public outreach and education team, so not necessarily every time you invite us, it could be any combination of us would show up and we'd be happy to come.
absolutely, thank you.
Edith, have you seen any improvements? You know, I know a lot of the cities have the stickers that they put on the catch basins that say no dumping, drains to river.
Lake Erie starts
Lake Erie
here.
starts here. I mean,
Mhm.
that's an example of public education, you know,
Yep.
like, oh, I was gonna not me, but like, I'm somebody and has a cup in my hand,
Right.
to use your point, and I'm about to just like pitch it in the sewer because I don't see a trash can. Oh, I'll think twice about that. Like those, you know.
It's subconscious. So the school children or the scout troops that have been part of either the stenciling, we don't stencil in the city,
Right.
we glue them down.
Yeah.
Anybody who's been part of doing that project now has an awareness of, whoa, wait a minute, anything that goes into my storm sewer is ending up in Lake Erie.
Yeah.
And I always add the piece, Lake Erie is your drinking water source.
Mhm.
So what you're dumping, you're going to end up drinking, because we can't filter it all out or clean it all out. And more and more I am talking to teenagers and young adults who are saying, oh yeah, I saw that stencil on the drain, that's really cool that you guys put that down there. It's kind of that older generation where I'm missing that from.
youth.
Yeah, but I think in general, that one generation is more aware of trash in the environment just in general. I'm not saying they're necessarily good about it, but I think they're more aware of it because we had those commercials back in the day. It's that younger generation that is getting the education of all of this water is going to Lake Erie and you've got to protect it by not letting it get in it in the first place. Yeah, so I think it's really worth it. But yeah, we need a lot more involvement so people see it themselves by stenciling or gluing it down.
So with the, what is it, water basins? What
The
are
sub
they?
basins?
The catch basin.
Yeah, if trash get down there, then what happens?
You get a clog, and then if it clogs enough, the water can't get through, and that's how it will back up and it will flood.
Or if it doesn't clog, it goes to the lake or the river.
Yeah. So one of the other things that the city was part of was trash traps. We had a 3-year grant from Great Lakes Restoration Initiative to put trash traps into our large waterways. So we had one in the Ottawa River, one in Swan Creek. We had some, I call them water vacuum cleaners. They sit in a marina and the motor literally sucks the water through. So anything that's in the marina floating will get sucked in and then they empty it daily. So those all are going into the water this year as part of an effort of catching as much water as we can before it gets to the Maumee and then gets out to Lake Erie. And considering how much of our trash is plastic now, we want to get it sooner out of the water than later, because the longer it stays in the water, the more it breaks down, and then you start getting your microplastics and your nanoplastics, and those are impossible to get out of Lake Erie. So that's another component that the city's doing, and we'll be kicking up that education again this summer as well.
Any ideas on probably future volunteer opportunities or?
Partners for Clean
Partners.
Streets. They have the stream cleanups and they do all the volunteer engagement for that, so that would be the person or the organization to look up.
Can you do a educational thing when it's time for leaf pickup, that it's best not to rake them into the streets?
Would love to. Yes.
Cause I always cringe when I drive down my street and everything's just raked into the street.
Yes. And we were working with communications last year to put out the message, and I think it started getting out there. Don't put your leaves in the street until the day before they're gonna pick up. So keep it on your grass on your own property until you know they're coming to pick it up, and then push it into the street. Anything else?
Maybe something you can add with the leaf pickup, and like I'm connected with the alerts for like when my bill is due and stuff. Maybe you guys can start adding a message or something.
That's a good idea.
To
Yep.
attach to people's water bill to make them more cognizant
Right.
of, hey, we're doing these projects, we can use your help.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good idea. I hadn't thought about the text alerts that go out. Yeah.
I think the trash thing is really important, and I mean, we talked about it, and I know there have been previous things where we've talked about it, and because like, it's definitely something that hurts public acceptance of green infrastructure because they accumulate trash, but then it's just like how to flip it so that people understand that because they accumulate trash, they're reducing, you know, debris getting in there, and it's also making it easier for you to clean up. And so, you know, just like
In one spot, having it in
yeah,
one spot.
exactly. And I mean, you know, like the concepts, we'll get there, but I have, you know, I can't say that I've seen like the full borne out how these go, but I have seen some pretty nicely designed curb cut like grates that, you know, are designed to really, they're mini forebays basically, and so then they'll let you can shovel out the grit, but then also they should catch the bottles and stuff, and that would make it really easy to clean out. But anyway, but yeah, it's like what public messaging, you know, to help people understand that, like, in like even my rain garden, it does, and my rain garden's not getting any runoff from the street, you know, it's just wind blown, getting caught against the plants, you know, I get chip bags and stuff in there all the time, and you know, it doesn't look good, but it's easier to clean them up than being everywhere, and then it keeps them out. And so yeah, isn't there a change with the whole Clear Water, Clean Choices campaign now? Is it like that stopping? Maybe there's an opportunity.
We're going to, we've shifted to, Lake Erie Starts Here, which is a local campaign, and Tima Cog is running that for us, as, not us, the city, us, the regional partnership,
Right.
And so a lot more of that messaging is going to be Toledo and Lucas County specific, whereas, Clean Choices, Clean Water,
Too many letters.
Clear Choices, Clean Water was coming out of Indiana.
Right.
And we had a Toledo website for it.
Right.
Whereas Lake Erie Starts Here now is going to be run and monitored by by TMACOG, and they're the ones doing all the spots with 13 ABC.
I love that campaign name. I mean, it just has such a positive connotation. Even if you don't understand what it is, you're like, oh, Lake Erie, I'm affecting Lake Erie in my life. There are things I can do to impact.
And the really nice thing is, we're at the western basin of Lake Erie, and Cleveland's all the way over on the eastern basin. All of those edge communities are going to be using the Lake Erie Starts Here moniker. So they may not have the same website, they may not have the same materials, but we're all going to be using Lake Erie Starts Here, so it becomes a consistent message around the lake.
Get people a better understanding of how connected they are to the lake. We learned about it in school, but we didn't learn about it deep enough to have that understanding. So.
Gotta work on the public access part next, so Toledoans can actually see Lake Erie and access it. But Penn 7's nice, right? So that's a nice. It's not quite Lake Erie, but it's getting closer than really much else you have in Toledo. So.
And I know we put in a grant application, and I want to say somebody else in TMACOG put in a grant application, and we were part of one, as part of the education piece, is to get inner city youth out of the city to the lake on a boat out there, so that they truly understand the water out there. Because if this is all you know, well, yeah, you can hear Lake Erie Starts Here, but you really don't get a feel for it. Even Swan Creek, and it's really not the same thing.
Sometimes you need to see it to
Yeah.
understand it.
What do you think about taking out the Stone Labs? Putting together a group, taking some kids out to Stone Labs May 10th, hopefully.
Awesome.
We were just talking about that. We're hoping to bring 15 young people that are in our joint program and other adjacent youth programs out there. So yeah.
I went to Stone Lab for summer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, took classes there. It's an amazing opportunity. If you get kids out to Stone Lab, they understand. It's such a cool experience.
Just getting on the boat where you can't see shore anymore, and there's no island, and wait a minute, Detroit's up here and Canada's here, what?
Well, they drop nets, and you can see, they pull them up and look at the little invertebrates and things that come up in the net, and they look at how cloudy is the lake water, and I mean, they do great programming for.
Well, that's amazing that you guys have that opportunity.
We're really looking forward to it.
Well, I'm going to say thank you very much, Wade. You can stop recording.